Like preeclampsia and eclampsia, do you know the differentiating factors between that? Because these are all things that people
You're talking about the
So the point is that you don't know what pregnant people go through and the risks that they go through in order to, but you are incapable of being pregnant, correct?
Okay or no?
Last time I checked.
So then why do you get to have an opinion
think you guys
if
wanna see
I
the
cannot say
backside of them,
that men,
but
just like
if this
Mandy
is
said
better,
earlier, men should have
we can do it
vasectomies
here.
because that prevents pregnancy, unwanted pregnancies.
Just like, again, I cannot bear children, but I also don't think that women should be able to suffocate their children 1 week
Who suffered?
before.
1 week after they're born?
Yeah.
But we're talking about abortion. We're not talking about
I know
after
that
birth.
The point is just because I
Yo.
can't produce children doesn't mean that I don't have a right to affect them.
Did he really just talk about like actually murdering, like born human beings? This is not the same thing, and I don't understand why you don't understand that. Parker, you can say whatever you want to say.
The point is to distinguish that the fact that just because I can't do something doesn't mean I don't have the duty to protect children, right?
Who are you protecting, and what are you protecting them from? Because you're not protecting them from childhood in food insecurity, because 1 in 5 children in this country don't
It's
get.
terrible. We should do more.
But we're not, and that's the problem. So until you're addressing societal issues that these children are being faced with once they're born, then you shouldn't have anything to say about what is happening prior to.
Never kill them.
But you voted for Donald Trump. You voted for somebody who's a Republican, and the Republican Party consistently does things that are against single parents and children. So how can you do these two things? These two things are not aligned.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the Republican Party makes mistakes every single day, and if I kept track of every single one of them, I'd probably pass out and die.
You should then.
Okay.
Here, I'm gonna have a few more things. If you want to ask any more questions about abortion, you can.
My point is, what is the thing, like, why is sentience such a critical factor? To ask you a question, because I guess I've kind of repeated that a lot, would it be wrong, would it be evil to damage a pre-sentient fetus so that it would not be capable of developing sentience for the sake of using this clump of cells for as like a sexual doll post-birth?
I think there are standards for like people who are brain dead, right? Individuals who are brain dead, or like, for example, dead humans. I don't think you could do that to dead humans. Do you think you could do that to dead humans?
No.
They don't possess life.
Right.
They don't possess future sentience, yet he still thinks that shouldn't be able to happen. I don't know why it's only a critique to my view if you're going to apply that.
Sure. Do you think, so again, to go back to the main question, why do you think that sentience is such a primary value?
So, like, again, it's going to be like match up with the moral intuitions we have for these different scenarios that we're going to bring up. Inevitably, every single position we have when it comes to morality is going to reduce down infinitely to a intuition. And then we're going to like compare, give these examples for like, do these particular types of examples match up with your intuitions or your core values? That's essentially the question, because there are some common shared values that we're going to have where I'm going to be like, oh, you don't believe we people should go through pain. We both agree on that. Given that we agree on that, right, it's going to be the case that we value women who are sentient who are going to go through pain, whereas we don't, the zygotes, right? Zygotes don't feel pain.
Say again?
Zygotes don't feel pain. Do you agree?
More of yes.
Do you value like reducing pain, right?
Often, but not always, right? I exercise, and that's very painful sometimes. But
For a future goal, right?
right.
But there's no future goal that would come if you get the abortion, right? It is the case that the only future goal that you had, the only goal that could be possible, because there's no way an embryo could have a goal, right, is that a pregnant individual wanted to terminate that pregnancy. So they're going to go through pain, they're going to go through suffering, whereas there would be no suffering if they get an abortion, right, in that type of capacity.
Right, but I think like a single mother will go through an extraordinary amount of pain and suffering to care for a small child.
Is that consensual?
What's that?
Was that an obligation that she consented to?
Not always.
But like you agree that at a specific point we have birth certificate, we have obligations and consent that we apply to like taking care of people. You can go to adoption centers. There are plenty of things. So like obviously when we talk about an obligation, right? Someone consented to that obligation. Someone may have caused that into existence, so they would have an obligation.
Sure,
there are
like,
multiple things we could talk about, but they're also sentient.
Sure, but like let's say like the child develops like a grotesque illness that requires her to work more jobs and things like that. She didn't consent to the child getting the illness. That doesn't give her the right to kill the child.
Wait, repeat that?
So let's say the child, after a couple of weeks, develops some sort of like very terrible illness that requires the mother to pick up extra jobs, to do a whole lot of extra work. which is very painful and very heroic for her to do, but requires a lot of pain and suffering, right? She didn't consent to all that, right? But it doesn't give her the right to kill the child.
She consented to the obligation of taking care of a kid, right? And what it is, you're talking about a sentient kid. You're not talking about an embryo or a zygote. You have to make that distinction when we're talking about these two different types of entities.
Right, my whole point is, what is the individual in question? Because why is sentience such a primary value?
You're asking the same question you've asked now 3 times.
I know.
And I'm going to tell you, it infinitely regresses to an intuition. We're going to compare different types of scenarios to our moral values that we have. And I'm going to show you, like, obviously when I tell the crowd that you think it's okay for a 10-year-old girl to get assaulted and that she has to go through that pregnancy, she's forced to go through that pregnancy, I'm going to say that's absurd. Everyone else is going to be like, that's insane. Right? And we're going to have different intuitions on that. We might not ever be able to come to a resolution on that, right, when it comes to this situation, right? But that still doesn't mean that I can't, like, call that out or debate you on that or engage with that point.
So you think...
It doesn't seem like we're moving anywhere. I mean, do you have any specific question that would be other than that? Because it seems like we're not moving anywhere on that.
The fullest extent of human rights begins at sentience.
Past or present and future subjective experience, yes.
Okay, so the moment that it gains sentience, it cannot be killed, it cannot be murdered. So, like, you would be against, like, second trimester abortions?
After lethal abortions after the point of sentience, which after the point of sentience, it's already going to be at a point where it's viable, so you just induce labor. You're going to do early birth at that point.
I mean, it's not always viable, right? There's many cases in which it, like, takes much longer to be viable.
What weeks is typically viability starting?
It varies a lot, right? Some of them can be as early as 28 weeks, right? But with some conditions, it can be not till about 38 or 40.
So in terms of viability, right, it's going to be an induction of labor. In most circumstances, it's going to be viable between 23 to 26 weeks, right? So at that point, there would be an induction of labor. If you're going to have a lethal abortion at that late, there are medical consequences that come with that, right? That would have to be taken into account. The doctors are not going to be recommending getting lethal abortions that late. There aren't people that are having kids, right, that are going through this whole thing. They're like 7 months, 8 months down the line, and then they're like, oh, now I just want to murder the child.
So if
that doesn't happen. Like,
let's say the child was born with a neurological condition and it would not gain sentience until 2 months after it was born, would you be able to kill the child at 1.5 months?
Well, it wouldn't be necessary in order to terminate a pregnancy. We'd probably just keep them on medical services until a later point. But there wouldn't be, like, an obligation at any point, right? Because it's not sentient.
So, like, you could just, like, let it starve to death?
It's not sentient, yeah. Okay. But technically, like, it would make sense in that circumstance for us to take care of it because it wouldn't be going against, like, anyone's, like, autonomy, right?
I mean, it would be, yeah. I appreciate the consistency. Like,
well, it's not sentient though. It doesn't have an experience. Never had an experience. Never would have an experience.
And can you do anything? Can you do something to hinder the child's capacity for sentience?
What do you mean?
Like, let's say, like, inject it with a certain thing so it'll grow fully to be regularly sized but never have sentience. Like, would that be wrong?
You know that's not physically possible, right? Are you saying, like, just in a logical hypothetical?
Sure, like you can inject it with something that would prevent it from developing sentience.
Like, would that be allowed to occur? Yes,
like,
sure.
Would you say that's wrong? No?
Nah.
Okay.
What is it? Why would it be wrong?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like if sentience is something.
How is that any different from abortion?
I was just asking a question to kind of just judge where you're at based off.
Sure. If it was going to be a zygote forever and never was going to become a rational human being like me and you, would you still value it?
Yes.
Yeah, a zygote?
Yeah, I mean, I would...
Wait, I have a question with this.
Sure.
Do you think that you would ever
Everybody,
mistake a person with a single cell organism?
Everybody, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that follow button.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
you haven't already followed, I'm going to boot you from the live
You're
stream.
capable of making a mistake between a person
So follow now.
and single cell organisms? Microorganisms?
Right, I mean, yeah, I think our evolution, like the way we developed via evolution...
But they weren't human beings, right?
What's up?
But when at that scale of evolution, they weren't human beings. So I've never once, let me just be clear, I've never once mistook a human being, a person, with a single cell organism. I've never done that before.
I mean,
Tell me when you've done this before.
Like a zygote? Like mixing up a zygote with a...
Well, yeah, you consider that a person. So it's just like in a typical conversation, if you were to say, I mistook a person with a single cell organism, someone would look at you like you're crazy.
Right, but like if you showed me a picture of a single-celled organism, it's like, is this a person or is this a amoeba? I'm not confident enough that I'd be able to give you with high precision.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a dolphin zygote or a human zygote, right? And I mean, if you go to an aquarium, are you like, oh, the human baby's in the aquarium, get him out of the aquarium? No, like obviously you can tell the distinction in every circumstance.
I think our intuition can only take us so far, right? Like we're capable of making mistakes and errors. Right? Our intuition, like, was evolved for us to be, like, primates. right? I mean, the fact that we can do math is impressive, right? Distinguishing single-celled organisms with anything, like it's no surprise that we shouldn't be able to do this.
It's not just an intuition, it's a typical distinction that we're going to make, right? I think in a typical distinction, I'm gonna say that I'm never gonna like go to a zoo and be like, oh my God, the human beings, right? No, it's not gonna happen, right?
Right, and that's what I'm saying, right? I'm just saying that we cannot rely on our intuition to be able to distinguish precisely when a human being exists.
But your intuition that like a 10-year-old grave victim should be forced to go through a pregnancy should be the law?
Yeah, I'm not saying that's an intuition, I'm saying that's like in accordance with reason, right?
Oh, what reason?
That because it is a human being and we believe that human beings have a right to life, we should not kill that human being.
Wait, but why should human beings have the right to life under your view? It's going to reduce back down to an intuition that you have, right?
Not necessarily.
Yes, it will. Okay, then give me a reason.
Why do human beings have value?
Yeah.
Because they're rational creatures.
Why do rational creatures have value?
Because the essence of rational creatures is the image of God. The image of God is
okay.
great value.
Then I could just ask you, why is it because just God considers something to be valuable that it's considered valuable? You can see how I can keep asking that question till you're going to be infinitely regressed to like, oh, that's just God's position or that's just God's intuition now. So now you brought up religion. Do you believe there should be a separation of church and state?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so should it be illegal for my mom to tell me that Santa Claus exists because that's a lie?
Should it be illegal for your mom to tell you that Santa Claus exists? No, I don't think that lying should be illegal.
Okay, what about Donald Trump? Donald Trump has cheated on every single one of his wives. According to the 10 Commandments, that is wrong. Should he be in prison?
If who?
Donald Trump has cheated on every single one of his wives. If he literally, right, because he violated one of the 10 Commandments, should he go to prison?
I mean, I definitely think that adultery should be, like, definitely we should do things to reduce it in terms of...
Should it be illegal?
I think adultery should be illegal.
Okay, so Donald Trump should be in prison for adultery. Hey, Trump for prison 2025. Let's go. Woo!
I would agree that, like, yeah, I don't think that Trump is some moral hero.
But you think he should be president from prison?
Yeah, I mean, trust me.
His Oval Office is behind bars. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, he's not my pick, right? I mean...
But do you think Kamala Harris should be behind bars?
I don't know enough about Kamala Harris to say whether or not she should be behind bars.
Okay, if you don't know whether or not Kamala Harris should be behind bars, why would you pick the guy to be president who's going to be behind bars under your view?
I think advocating for mass murder on repeat should be legalized.
Yeah, I will. All right, do you have any last questions you want to ask? Sorry, I couldn't hear what you just said. Okay, for sure. Hey, I appreciate your conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it.